Puberty hits everybody hard. I look forward to experiencing it myself one day. But some animals undergo physical changes that are truly incredible. Unfortunately, getting older isn't the only reason for these. Get the tissues out. This one's gonna be a real tearjerker. From an orangutan that was abandoned as a baby to whatever this tiny pink blob is, let's meet some animals that went through truly amazing transformations. Ghastly goats. There's nothing quite like a cute little baby animal. This is a Damascus goat. Wow, look at his little face. Damascus goats are native to the Middle East and known for their long flowing ears. They look kinda mystical. He wouldn't be out of place wandering around Skyrim. However, this adorable visage doesn't last. Prepare yourself for an adult Damascus goat. Ah, what the hell happened? Well, believe it or not, there are folks out there that think Damascus goats only get cuter as they age, so they're selectively bred to accentuate their weird features as much as possible. In some cases, owners even remove their ears. Poor things. Back in 2008, there was a goat festival in Saudi Arabia where these guys were judged to find the most beautiful. After the winners were chosen, they were sold at auction. Can you guess how much the most expensive one went for? $67,000. Are you kidding me? If you ask me, these things look like regular goats that have been left in the sun too long. I certainly wouldn't pay such an eye-watering amount for one, especially when some of the practices around their breeding are so questionable. What do you think? Are these goats cute or hideous? Let me know in the comments. Hefty hooves. As I was always told by Daddy Amazed,
having a pony is a lot of responsibility. You couldn't even look after a goldfish, little Amazed.
I never got my pony. In hindsight, it was probably for the best. Horses need a lot of attention, including having their hooves trimmed every few weeks, kind of like our fingernails. If they don't, well, you'll see. In 2017, a Shetland pony named Polly was found over in Belgium living in abject squalor, covered in lice and with her hooves wildly overgrown into painful spirals. It turns out they hadn't been trimmed for 10 years. In a terrible case of neglect, her owner had kept her hidden away from public view in a makeshift shack far from any roads. The owner was nowhere to be seen when Polly was found, but it seemed the poor pony had been completely abandoned. Amazingly though, Polly held on. And as soon as she was discovered, she got some much-deserved TLC, with her hooves finally being cut down and tended to. There, much better. Sadly, neglected horses aren't as uncommon as they should be. In Maryland in 2015, a horse called Quest was rescued from a private farm after an eye-watering 15 years of neglect. Unbelievably, his hooves were in an even worse state than Polly's at 3 feet long. Thankfully, though, he also received the care that he needed. Quest's hooves are now a nice, normal length. He's much happier. You know, seeing these wonderful grooming results has really inspired me. I'm finally going to trim my fingernails. Mothomorphosis. My cozy bed cocoon. I'm snuggled up all tight, and in the morning, I'll emerge a beautiful butterfly. Okay, I'm more likely to look like a drowned rat. But unlike me, caterpillars really do go through a magnificent transformation. It's called metamorphosis, and the frosty-looking Atticus atlas caterpillar experiences one of the wildest metamorphoses of them all. See, caterpillars can't reproduce. They're not born with the bodies for it, so they have to become butterflies or moths, which do have the right tools for the trade. The thing is, completely transforming into a different creature is pretty tough, and requires a hell of a lot of energy. To get this energy, caterpillars need to eat a lot. In fact, they do basically nothing but eat. The Atticus atlas caterpillar is no different, feeding voraciously on foliage until it reaches about 4.5 inches long. Then it's time for the magic to happen. Our boy Atlas spins a cocoon around itself from silk and desiccated leaves and stays inside for 4 weeks. During this time, the caterpillar literally digests its own body. Ew. It breaks some body parts down and turns them into others whilst preserving and moving around essential organs like the brain. Eventually, when the whole process is complete, it emerges. And man, all that metamorphosing sure pays off. Not only is this thing a beauty, it's also absolutely massive with a wingspan of nearly 10 inches. And because it ate so much as a caterpillar, it doesn't need to eat anything at all as a moth. It survives on all the fat reserves it's stored up. Whoa, I hope you all grow up to be beautiful butterflies. Or moths, of course. Frankly, they're cooler. If you want your brain to go through a metamorphosis into a much bigger one, why not like and subscribe? That way you'll never miss out on more incredible videos like this one. All done? Awesome. Let's take a look at some more wild wildlife transformations. Vulnerable Vincent. As humankind continues to expand, we increasingly encroach on animals as habitats and force them to either adapt to life among us or suffer the consequences. Unfortunately, those consequences can be dire. Back in 2015, a young howler monkey got accidentally pinned against an insulated transformer in Costa Rica, electrocuting the poor little guy, causing extensive third-degree burns to his face and hands. Oh no! Amazingly, however, the infant defied all odds and survived this horrible experience long enough to be found and taken in by carers at Costa Rica's Refuge for Wildlife in Nasara. The carers worked tirelessly, applying soothing cream to his burns every day, as well as giving him plenty of medication and antibiotics. And all that care and attention worked. This brave little guy managed to make a recovery that'll lead him on a path to being returned to the rainforest. The ordeal has left him with a deformed ear, which has led his carers to name him Vincent, after Vincent van Gogh. But that's not stopped him from being a very happy and healthy howler now. Vincent loves to wrestle and play with the other rescue monkeys, who will probably be released along with him when they're good and ready. And it's all thanks to the refuge, with some support from the charity International Animal Rescue. Nothing like a story of overcoming incredible odds to bring a smile to your face. Voracious Vincent. From a cheeky monkey's recovery to a fat dachshund's struggle with food, here's another animal called Vincent. Now, old Vince wasn't in a great place in 2015 when he was picked up by a county animal shelter in Houston, Texas. His owner had passed away and he was suffering from depression, causing him to overeat. Fat Vincent was a whopping 38 pounds when he was brought in. Sheesh, that's the same weight as 2.5 bowling balls. The extra heft gave the curvy canine dangerously high cholesterol, put him at risk of nerve damage, and made it almost impossible for him to walk. But when nonprofit organization Canine Angels Rescue heard about the poor dog's condition, they vowed to help our big buddy lose some of his extra weight. His comprehensive exercise regime began with water aerobics, and once he started seeing results, he was taken out for daily walks. It didn't take very long for Fat Vincent to become Skinny Vinny. Now happy and healthy, Vincent has been adopted by a loving family. Aw, don't get it twisted. Our guy still loves food, but he loves exercise too now. Everything in moderation. I could learn a thing or two from Skinny Vinny. I've got the food-loving part down, but the exercise enjoyment, that still eludes me. Dirty Dog. The Wall Clipper Corporation is known for clippers, trimmers, and other tools to make any hair fabulous. I mean, my long flowing beard is always luxurious. Wall doesn't just focus on hunks like me though, they're in the business of grooming man's best friend too. To that end, the company works with nonprofits to host the Dirty Dogs Contest, a canine makeover competition. The best canine do-ups from across the USA are shown off in an effort to win prize money for select animal charities. Take a look at Flynn, a contestant from 2022's contest. Heartbreakingly, Flynn was discovered abandoned in a soaking cardboard box outside a shelter in Texas. He was cared for by SAVE Rescue, who realized that as well as his overgrown fur, he had a broken leg, ulcers in his eyes, and was dangerously underweight. Jeez. But don't worry, after months of care and grooming, Flynn made a radical recovery. Look how smart he looks now. He's since been adopted into a loving home, and though he didn't win the makeover contest, he's a winner in my eyes. Help for Heidi. Back in April 2018, a concerned citizen called equine charity Here for Horses to a building site in Durham, England. When a volunteer arrived, she peered through the fence and was horrified to see what looked like a deceased horse lying in the mud. Thankfully, things weren't quite as they seemed. After approaching the animal, she realized it was still breathing. But things weren't looking good. The horse named Heidi was covered in painful sores and couldn't even stand without help. Help, however, is exactly what she got. Heidi was carefully transported to a sanctuary and began a long, difficult road to recovery. She needed several blood transfusions and a whole lot of tender love and care, but after 45 long days, she could finally stand up by herself again. The hard work of the volunteers paid off, and not only did Heidi recover, but she's thriving. Just look at her now. The charity cites her fighting spirit as the reason behind her remarkable transformation. Apparently her skin is still very sensitive, and the special care she requires means she'll likely stay at the sanctuary for the rest of her life. But she's happy, safe, and high on life. I hear you, Heidi. That's how I felt the one time I got a bonus 10th chicken nugget in my 9-nugget box. What a feeling! Not so flamboyant flamingo. Flamingos are known best for one thing: their striking pink color, right? Well, get ready to have your mind blown. Flamingos are not pink. Not naturally, anyway. This is a baby flamingo. It's dull gray and frankly unremarkable. Sorry, flamingos. So what? Do they all secretly dye their feathers? Amazingly, kind of. Now don't get me wrong, flamingos aren't buying box dyes from their local Walmart. This color change occurs 100% naturally. See, many plants produce colored pigments called carotenoids. Carrots, for example, are orange thanks to the carotenoids they produce, but tomatoes are red because of carotenoids. And carotenoids are also found in microscopic algae, specifically the same algae that brine shrimp love to chow down on. This heavy algae consumption gives the shrimp their pink hue. Guess who eats the brine shrimp then? That's right, flamingos. A lifetime of eating delicious shrimp slowly turns a juvenile flamingo into a bright, vibrant pink color. Whoa, wonder how much shrimp I'd need to eat to turn bright pink. Challenge accepted. Baba rack sheep. Male pattern baldness is no threat to me. I've got more hair than I know what to do with. It's a blessing for handsome old me, but a curse for this woolly guy. This is Barak. Yes, Barak. Incredible. Barak was found wandering alone in a state forest in Victoria, Australia, with his wool painfully overgrown and matted. At one point, the ram had an owner, but either escaped or was abandoned. We know he's a domestic sheep because they're bred to produce far more wool than wild ones. While wild sheep naturally shed with the seasons and can rub against trees to remove their wool, thousands of years of selective breeding has left domesticated sheep incapable of doing so without human help. It was clear that Barak hadn't been shorn in years, and the extra weight wasn't doing him any favors. It was pulling down his lower eyelids, causing painful grit and debris to get stuck in them. In total, the wool weighed 78 pounds. That's about as much as a 10-year-old kid. All that wool would be enough to knit 61 sweaters or nearly 500 pairs of socks. Crikey. Fortunately, Barak was taken to Edgar's Mission Farm Sanctuary. There he finally got the care he needed and was given a serious trim. Phew, the freshly styled Barak looks much happier, and he was nursed fully back to health by the volunteers. Reminds me of when I finally hit the barbers after the COVID lockdown. Mola to Wola. Want a Tic Tac? Well, okay, don't actually take one. These aren't mints, they're fish. Specifically, they're baby mola, also known as sunfish. They're absolutely minuscule, I know, but they don't stay that way. Let's just say that mola have a slight growth spurt. We know of 3 different species, and they all become completely colossal as they age. The biggest, the giant sunfish, reaches staggering lengths of 11 feet, making the strange-looking behemoth the largest bony fish in existence. Oh, and I didn't mention how much they can weigh. Up to 6,050 pounds. Which is as heavy as the full starting lineup of an American football team. Jeez, hard to believe they start life able to sit in the palm of your hand. Something in sunfish's genes makes this astounding growth possible, as despite living off a nutritionally sparse diet of mostly jellyfish, sunfish grow around 2 pounds a day. That's 4 times faster than most other fish. So in just a few months, the puny little babies become hulking gigantors. Damn. I need to learn their secrets before I rejoin the gym. The Potato Chip Monster. In 2015, Debbie Raffoon came across a stray dog in the streets of Alabama. As head of the charity Heart of Alabama Save, Rescue, Adopt, she was no stranger to difficult situations. But this one would prove tough even for her. We're not sure how or why, but Augustus here had suffered some severe neglect and was fearful of humans. However, after a little coaxing, Debbie managed to pick him up and rushed him straight to a veterinary surgery. The vet was stunned. Augustus had the worst case of mange they'd ever seen. Mange is a disease where tiny mites start breeding on a dog's skin, making it super itchy. In turn, the dog scratches themselves so much that they tear their hair out and severely damage their skin. It got so bad that Augustus's rescuers called him a potato chip monster because his skin was so raw and flaky. Man, Suffice it to say, he was in dire need of some TLC, and luckily, he got it. Thanks to Debbie, Augustus was given vital care from the vet and began his road to recovery. Once the mange was cleared, he was taken to the Hostra Sanctuary. Over time, and with daily love and affection, Augustus's fur began to grow back, as did his trust in people. Finally, he was able to be a normal, happy dog again. And that's exactly what he's doing right now. Augustus has been adopted and is living his best life. Frankly, he's earned it. Peculiar puggles. We can all agree echidnas are cute, right? I think we can also agree that their most defining feature are the many sharp defensive spines that cover their backs. Imagine my surprise then when I first saw a baby echidna. Wait a minute, what? Baby echidnas, also known as puggles, yep, puggles, are weird squishy blobs that look more like they belong on Mars than Earth. If the spines are so important for echidnas to defend themselves, why don't they start out with them? Well, it's got nothing to do with childbirth. Crazily, echidnas are the only living mammals beside platypuses that lay eggs. The reason does seem to be related to child rearing, though. See, echidna mothers have marsupial-like pouches where they keep their puggles safe for the first 2 months of their lives. Can you imagine how painful it'd be for old mom if they had spines at this time? Yeah. So when their spines do eventually start to grow, they leave the pouch ready to enter the big wide world. Or at least almost. They actually stay hidden away in their burrow until they're about a year old. Sounds like such a struggle being a puggle. Caring for Kev. When Kev the cat was found abandoned outside in Blackwood, Wales in 2019, he was in a really bad way. The 2-year-old Moggy had a serious neck injury and only weighed a little over 3 pounds. That's the kind of weight you'd expect from a 4-month-old kitten. Jeez. On top of that, the poor puss had a wounded leg from catching it in a plastic collar. How he managed to get his leg trapped, we don't know, but it cut deep. Luckily, feline welfare charity Cats Protection took Kev in, but they weren't sure he'd make it. After rushing him to a vet, though, volunteers were relieved when he responded well to treatment. Phew. After a whole load of cuddles, food, and copious attention, Kev made an incredible recovery and was transformed back into a normal, feisty feline. Aww. He hasn't been already. It's only a matter of time before this brave boy is adopted into a loving home. After all, cats always land on their feet. Black, white, and pink. Naked mole rats are really weird animals. Lots of people find them super creepy, but this little guy actually looks kinda cute, right? Okay, I have to come clean. It only looks cute because it isn't a naked mole rat. It's a baby giant panda. I know, right? Giant pandas start out tiny, pink, hairless, and blind, then become absolute Brutuses. Oh, and they're also born without genitals. What? That's right, pandas develop for so little time in the womb that when they first emerge, they're literally sexless. In fact, they're born a minuscule 900th of their mother's size. For comparison, humans are born just 20 times smaller than our moms. Crazy. Pandas are so helpless when they're first born that if a mother has twins, she'll often only have enough time and energy to take care of one and be forced to abandon the other. Aw, how could you abandon something as cute as this? Either way, they don't stay so helpless for long. Within 3 or 4 months, giant panda cubs are furry, can see, and yes, they even grow their own bits. Round of applause, please. Poor primate. And it's tissue time again. Back in 2015, volunteers at International Animal Rescue were walking through a village in Borneo when they came across a cardboard box that had been left out in the sun. After looking inside, they were shocked at what they saw. Tucked in there, lying almost lifeless, was a tiny baby orangutan. He looked seriously weak. The little ape was suffering from mange that had turned his skin gray and made him lose most of his hair. As if that wasn't bad enough, he lay soaked in his own urine. Indeed, the volunteers were worried he might have already passed away. Poor little guy. It turns out that the leader of the village had bought the tiny ape as a pet for less than $30, but quickly grew bored and abandoned him. Wow, what a nice sounding man. The poor ape's name is Gito. Anyway, our boy Gito was bundled onto a motorbike and rushed to a veterinary surgery. Thankfully, he survived the grueling 9-hour ride, but then he had to go through the ordeal of actual treatment. Gito was put on a rehydrating drip and vets immediately got to work treating his injured skin. Against all odds, he pulled through. Now Gito spends his days in a protected forest alongside other orphaned orangutans. Once he's learned how to survive in the wild, he'll be released along with his adoptive family. Until then, he seems to be having a great time. Just look at him going ape. Pit bully. Is there anything cuter than a widow puppy? No, there isn't. Just take a look at this American Pit Bull Terrier. Must pet. But dogs are for life, not just for Christmas. Now, doggos of all ages are adorable, but they definitely get bigger. The cute little Pit Bull Terrier eventually turns into a big beefy bulldozer in one of the most dramatic transformations in the canine club. Despite their cute beginnings, American Pit Bulls grow up to be all muscle and can weigh a chunktastic 80 pounds. That's almost as heavy as your toilet. And no, I'm not flushing your chain here. Don't panic though. Sure, they definitely look intimidating, but most bull terriers are actually total sweethearts that are great with kids. Just avoid getting on their bad side. As soon as they're old enough, they could probably snap you like a twig. Yeah, I mean, if I had to, I'm pretty sure I could take this little fella on, but this guy? Bad chance. Luckily, I'd much rather tickle his tum. Mr. Frodo. Back in 2018, some volunteers at the charity Good Samaritans found Frodo wandering the streets of Croatia. No, not the lovable hobbit, this guy. Despite his looks, Frodo is a dog, but at some point he'd been abandoned and left to fend for himself. So he looked a lot more like Gollum by the time he was discovered. The sorry-looking pup was covered in fleas and ticks, severely underweight, and had an infected eye. Out of their depth, the Samaritans called experienced animal rescuer Claudius Zagurniak, who promptly arrived on the scene. After managing to earn Frodo's trust with food, she took him to a medical professional. Sadly, his infected eye couldn't be saved, and for a moment it was up in the air if Frodo himself would make it. But Frodo wasn't going down that easily. He made it all right. Days and weeks of love and treatment later, he slowly but surely got his strength back. Then, before he knew it, Frodo was back in business. His fur regrew, he started lifting weights, and suddenly he was a lively, loving doggo again. Okay, I lied about the weights, but still. Before long, he was quickly snapped up by some new loving owners who spoil him regularly. Every dog has his day, but it seems like Frodo's owning every day now. Violetta's liberation. Unfortunately, as long as humankind has interacted with Mother Nature, we've found ways to abuse her. Dancing bears are a particularly shocking example of this and were a common phenomenon from the Middle Ages all the way up to the 19th century. Bear cubs would be snatched from the wild and have their teeth removed before being forced into a life of slavery for human entertainment. And though the horrific practice isn't popular anymore, it still survives in some parts of the world. Violetta was a dancing bear who was captured in Bulgaria as recently as the 80s. After being captured, her nose was pierced and re-pierced without anesthesia before a large metal ring was put through it. Then a chain was attached to the ring and used to lead her around. All this did was injure her further to the point she never fully healed. Man, that's all completely awful, but I'm afraid it gets worse. See, dancing bears are trained to dance in a truly sadistic way. The captive mammals are placed on a metal platform over a fire. As the platform heats up, the animals are forced up on their two hind legs. Because of this, they frantically lift their paws off and on the hot metal to try and relieve the burning pain. Of course, it doesn't work, and all the while their captors play a drum or other instrument, so the bears associate the music with their agony. This means that even when they aren't on the platform, they're trained to instinctively jump up and dance if they hear the music. Cripes. But as horrible as this is, it's not all bad. In 2003, volunteers for the charity Four Paws International managed to find and rescue Violetta after 20 years of suffering. She was taken to a bear sanctuary where she slowly began to recover from her torment. In time, she became a happy, healthy animal and lived a good old life until she eventually passed away from natural causes in 2020. Rest in peace, Violetta. I'm sure there's a big old mountain of honey up there for you in bear heaven. Phew, that's enough animal transformations for one day. Running out of tissues. Which of these did you think was the most amazing? Let me know down in those comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.